As Libyan rebels take control of Gaddafi's compound in Tripoli, and British Deputy Prime Minister Clegg declares the Libyan leader's 4-decade reign to be near its end, it's time to reflect on the West's latest imperial adventure, the military takeover of a sovereign country which has violated several UN Security Council resolutions. Under the pretext of protecting civilians, the military wing of the Anglo-American establishment, NATO, has actually killed numerous innocent Libyans, as well as damaging the infrastructure of a stable, prosperous country.
Libyan state media said on Tuesday dozens of civilians had been killed in a NATO strike on a village about 90 miles east of Tripoli. NATO says it's looking into the reports. Libyan state television showed the charred bodies of at least 3 young children and said they were killed by a NATO strike on Monday night on the village of Marja. It also showed wounded women and children being treated in a hospital. The television station reported that a total of 85 people had been killed in Marja, but it did not say how many of these were civilians. The official Jana news agency said 20 families had been killed, without giving a more precise figure. This number was also cited by a man interviewed on Libya TV who said he had lost his daughter.
My 2-year-old daughter and entire families are here from other areas. They came all the way here to escape the bombings from the airstrikes. 20 families are dead, children and women, all of them innocent people.
The casualty reports have not been independently verified.
The aims of Western intervention in Libya changed as the war progressed. Initially we were told NATO had been employed to prevent a massacre in the rebel-held city of Benghazi, a massacre which never occurred, but a pretext which paved the way for an all-out air assault on the country. Bombing civilians to protect them constitutes a truly twisted example of Orwellian doublethink. The Anglo-American establishment has acted with reckless impunity, and as Denis Kucinich notes, their attack on Libya has moved the world community from the rule of law to the rule of force, and set a precedent for NATO to become the new global cop. Civilian casualty figures are hard to establish, with some estimates putting the number of dead at over 15,000. The number of innocent victims is likely to increase as battles rage between rebels and pro-Gaddafi forces in urban Tripoli. Human deaths are of course the most appalling consequence of the attack on Libya, but we must also consider the financial cost of the war. At a time when Britain and the US are facing economic meltdown, social welfare programs and public services are being slashed across the board, and the cost of living is spiraling ever higher, taxpayers have been forced to contribute obscene amounts of money to fund the war in Libya.
The U.S. military has already spent hundreds of millions of dollars more than the Pentagon's estimations. A Pentagon memo has put the cost of the U.S. operations until mid-May at around $700 million. The U.S. has about 75 aircraft, including drones, involved in the operations against forces loyal to Libyan strongman Muammar Gaddafi. The pace of spending is higher than reported by the U.S. Defense Department in late March. Pentagon officials told a congressional hearing that the U.S. had spent about $550 million in Libya at a rate of about $40 million a month.
But at the same time, this is going well beyond the sort of protection of civilians that was the original mandate of the NATO force, and they've now got over 4,000 sorties flown since the air war began. So I think this is, we've never seen anything quite like this. I don't know that the American public will stand behind this or not.
And now that figure has risen to 60 million.
The official war costs stated by the Pentagon, presumably an underestimation, are a staggering $900 million. The official figure given in June for the UK was over £200 million, though some estimates have claimed the cost could rise to as much as £1 billion, at a time when the British and American people struggle to make ends meet during a global financial depression. Whilst the goals of the intervention shifted from preventing a massacre to toppling the Gaddafi regime, the real reasons for the war have been blindingly obvious to those with the most rudimentary knowledge of geopolitics, namely to capture Libya's natural resources, such as its massive reserves of oil and gold. Libya's oil reserves are the largest in Africa and the 9th largest in the world, at an estimated 42 billion barrels, and the country has declared gold reserves worth more than $6 billion.
I think that what is at stake here is something far more fundamental, which nobody is really mentioning, at least in the media. This is part of the battle for oil. Libya has 3.5% of global oil reserves, twice those of the United States. It's one of the major oil producers. It supplies large amounts of oil to the European Union. Its National Oil Corporation is among the 25 largest oil companies in the world. And what is involved here is the battle for oil.
The manner in which the West has turned on Gaddafi is particularly striking, given the recent reconciliation that took place between the Libyan leader and the West in recent years. In 2003, Libya voluntarily abandoned its nuclear weapon-making capability and then opened up its country to international investment, privatizing many of its state-owned companies. Who can forget Tony Blair's infamous handshake in a tent in the Libyan desert, when in 2004 he welcomed Gaddafi as a partner in the war on terror, in order to secure deals between British oil companies and the Libyan regime. Unfortunately for the West, Gaddafi proved to be an awkward business partner, soon demanding a higher price for Libyan oil and a majority share of the revenues. It became clear to the Western establishment that he had to be removed, and the rebel uprising in Libya earlier in the year proved an opportune excuse to do so. The purported goal of NATO's initial intervention rapidly morphed into a campaign to oust Gaddafi and his regime. To justify this illegal attempt at toppling Gaddafi, the Libyan leader's alleged crimes against the West have been frequently highlighted by our political leaders and repeated in the mainstream media. The murder of PC Yvonne Fletcher, gunned down outside the Libyan embassy in London in 1984, has been invoked in an attempt to demonize the Libyan regime, even though there is a convincing alternative narrative implicating Western intelligence and not Libyan diplomats in PC Fletcher's murder.
On Dispatches this week and next, back on the trail of one of the most important investigations the programme has mounted. Dramatic new evidence on the killing of policewoman Yvonne Fletcher in London's St James's Square. Tonight, how the official version of the events behind her murder cannot be true. How she cannot have been shot from the Libyan embassy, but if not, then how? In a major two-part investigation, Dispatches reporter Joe Laban pieces together the full sinister truth behind her death. He will meet the man who knows just why she was killed, and the man who brought the gun into this country. And he will ask exactly who was in the know. That's Dispatches, on the disturbing evidence we must confront in Murder in St James's.
The Lockerbie bombing, which in recent weeks has been confidently asserted as personally ordered by Gaddafi, is cited by Barack Obama and William Hague as another reason for why he should be removed from power. This is despite the existence of very strong evidence suggesting the innocence of the man convicted of the bombing, Abdel Baser al-Megrahi, and the possibility that Libya might not have had any involvement in the outrage at all. Some researchers convincingly allege it was actually carried out by Palestinian-based terrorists under the orders of Iran, in revenge for the accidental blasting out of the sky of an Iranian passenger jet by a US warship in 1988.